Hi and welcome back. I'm Helen, therapist, author, and your host of the I Don't Think We Talk Enough About podcast, where I'm joined weekly by such wonderful guests who bring their warmth, wisdom, and expertise to those topics that I feel we need to talk about more. And today I welcome Josh Connolly, a resilience and wellbeing coach and breathwork practitioner whose story has really touched me. Josh is the author of the incredible book, It's Them, Not You: How to Break Free from Toxic Parents and Reclaim Your Story. And gosh, has Josh achieved this. Josh, welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to sit and listen to that, yeah.
I was so touched by your story from kind of two perspectives. One being a therapist and obviously doing a lot of work with people who have come from families that aren't a fairy tale, that have come from families that haven't given them what they've needed. And then also touched me as a parent, and I'm a parent of 3 children, and I know you're a parent now, and I was very moved by your story through that and what your journey from what you went through as a child, your inner child, coming through to being a parent yourself and the healing journey you've been on. I appreciate your work in this space a lot. It must be helping just so many people.
Yeah, look, I get a lot of nice messages about the impact that it's had on people.
Good.
But I think a lot of people have not had much space for truth. If you've grown up in any kind of dysfunction, if you've grown up in a difficult environment, I think you are taught from a very young age to not have your truth. You see your truth upset people a lot as a child. And then I think that plays out in society to a degree, I think. I think that often people feel like they can't say their truth. And when you can't say your truth, in most cases, you lack a space to be able to express that truth in any way. So then it goes into your body, and that's problematic. It shapes how you see yourself.
Of course it does.
And it shapes how you see the world, but particularly as well, I guess, most importantly, how you believe you can be loved. Because I think, when we talk about attachment and we talk about the importance of those first 7 years, consciously or not, you're developing your brain to try and find that attachment, right? You're trying to seek that attachment. And so I think that when who you truly are, is problematic to the people that you're trying to attach to, then you learn self-abandonment. And,
of course you do.
And so you begin to live a life believing that in order to be loved, you need to, I say, self-edit and self-organize. In some ways it's become a great skill, but when you're not aware of it, you're lonely all the time, right? Because you're abandoning yourself, you're working out who people want you to be.
No, of course.
And being that, yeah.
And as a child, even as an adult, but ultimately as a child, all we're doing is trying to survive.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot, actually. We're organisms trying to survive. So we just do it the best way possible.
Yeah.
And for you, that was to stop using your voice in a way then when you were younger, I'm suggesting.
Yeah. As a child, I began to organize, to edit, and I don't think this was conscious, but to practice being versions of myself that the people around me accepted.
I wonder if you just wanted to give us a background to your story from whenever to where you are now.
Yeah, look, I think the important thing to say is that when I stopped drinking when I was 24, right? So I'm 37 now, so 12 and a half years ago. And I think at that stage in my life, I would have told you that I had had an idyllic childhood, perfect childhood. There was nothing majorly wrong in my childhood. People have it way worse than me and all that kind of stuff. I knew, obviously, that I lost my dad when I was 9, but I had things that would roll off the tongue, at least I had a dad and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until I began the journey into sort of understanding myself that I realized that my life was not idyllic when I was a child. And I think that's important to say because because when I said I had the perfect childhood when I was 23, I wasn't thinking I didn't have the perfect childhood. Let me lie and tell you that I did.
Interesting.
I believed I had the perfect childhood.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't look further enough inside of myself to even question that. So then when I started questioning it, and I realized that, you know, it wasn't like that. And I grew up with, my dad was an alcoholic. And I remember him as like a violent, angry, scary person who ultimately scared me when he was drunk, scared me when he was sober. And he spent a number of years in prison when I started school. Then he came out of prison, and then when I was about 9, that's when he died as a result of his drinking. But my mum had met my stepdad, who she's still with now, and we sort of moved to a different part of town and never ever spoke about my dad again, ever. Like, didn't know when his birthday was, couldn't have told you what date he died on by the time I was, like, there was no, like, this is the day that my dad died on, or there was none of that. We just gone. It was like he didn't exist. Silence, yeah. And there's a key thing to understand about that, which is like, because we say things that like time is a healer. Time gives the opportunity to heal, and I think sometimes time creates enough distance to feel like we've healed somewhat, so that we can start to do the next part of it. But actually, what happened to me is that it, like, my pain compounded because I was unable to explore it when I reached senior school. So, I mean, I found alcohol and drugs when I was 12, I started smoking cannabis.
I was going to say, was it around 12 to 14? Because that's
12.
often, yeah.
Yeah. And here's my truth. I'm grateful that I did, because nobody was giving me anything else. And I don't know if I'd have made it without it. And I think that might sound a little strange to people. I'm certainly not advocating for 12 and 13-year-olds to use it, but what I'm saying is that I had nothing else. Nothing else.
And when you say nothing else, what you mean is?
Nothing to soothe my pain, to deal with the ways that I felt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your body, again, trying to survive. You know, how interesting, because the teenage brain just isn't fully developed. What we call our executive functions of our brain just isn't developed.
Yeah.
So we don't have that rationale, that reasoning, that parenting brain. It's just not there.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fully develop until we're 25, 26.
But I would even add to that in some ways, rationally, what I was doing made sense as well.
To a 12-year-old brain, yes, it absolutely did.
Yeah.
There wasn't another way.
No. And I think that the level of pain that people experience, you find a way to deal with it, right? So that's what I did. But as a result of that, in some ways, from the age of about 13 to 15, maybe even a little bit older than that, my life was chaotic when I look back at it. Okay. I was involved in like drug dealing and like fighting and violence and all that kind of stuff. And if I'm being gut level honest, don't remember feeling like I hated my life then. Life was all right. Life was all right. I had something. I had meaning. I had purpose. Yeah. And I think like one of the things that is not really talked about is when I got involved in what you would probably call gangs now, but it didn't really feel like gangs when I was in it, but that's arguably what it was. Like, I would have gone to the edge of the earth for the people that I was hanging about with. I was always really loyal, very caring, and very driven. But because I didn't have like a home I did have a home. Let me premise that by saying my mum had met my stepdad, and we had a safe, functional. That's probably not the right word. We had a safe, more functional home, right? About as functional as family homes probably are in Western culture, right? But because of what had happened to me and the fact that nobody had helped me explore it adequately, I felt like I didn't have a home. I felt lost at home. I was terrified of showing any true emotion through fear of upsetting my mum. I didn't want to upset my stepdad because I thought if I become too much of a problem, he'll go and then I've no idea how we'll live. So I was like carrying all of that from the age of like maybe 10. So I had all of these amazing qualities, and I was giving them in the wrong place. And our juvenile prisons are full of young boys and girls with amazing qualities.
Yes.
Who have lost their way and have been failed by society, and we sort of we punish them.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because, and I'm really grateful you sharing your story there, but you hinted at it before, and then it seemed very prevalent then. Society. I wanted to say to you, who stepped up for you and said, Josh, are you okay? Is everything okay?
In my life?
Yeah.
Nobody.
From teachers, from, that kind of looking at the bigger picture of what's happened to you to cause this, as opposed to why are you doing this? It's that what on earth's happened that's created you to lose your way here. And that's the society element, isn't it?
Yeah, and the reality is that nobody did.
No, so you found safety in that peer group.
Yeah, of course
and they did
Yeah.
provide safety.
They provided...
You belonged.
Exactly.
You felt like you belonged.
Belonging, purpose.
Exactly.
Selling drugs, gave me a purpose, gave my life meaning. I felt like I belonged, like I was part of something.
Yeah.
So and I searched for that a lot through my life. I searched for that for a lot through my life. I went from gangs when I was younger, and then I was involved in football violence when I was like a young adult, late teens, early 20s perhaps. But it's the same thing, purpose, meaning. I was searching always for a dad. So I was always attached to the top person in whatever space I was moving in.
Interesting, yeah.
Because I wanted, to impress a man. Because I think that I never knew, still don't, I've done some work around it, but I never knew what it was like to love a man. I never had the love of a man. So when I was 19, I knew how to care for a man by saying, if anybody fights you, I'll fight them as well.
Yeah.
So I got your back.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to emotionally or in any other way care for a man or allow a man to care for me, because I'd never done it.
And it sounds like you didn't have healthy examples of it around you, maybe in aunts and uncles or other relationships around you.
No. And my stepdad is an amazing man, in particularly with, taking my mum, taking us children on when he met my mum and stuff. And my mum and my stepdad are still together. But my stepdad is very different to me.
Okay.
Yeah. My stepdad doesn't understand emotions. He doesn't do emotions. So he doesn't know how to go and meet somebody like me.
No.
He still really probably doesn't now. Not emotionally. And by the way, I think he's the most common man in our society.
I'm just going to say, I think it's a younger generation coming through now that's seeing the males, not everywhere, but in some circles, it's beginning to shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why you're such a great example to go out. Do you talk to young men in your role?
Yeah, I've done quite a lot in schools. I don't do as much now, but I used to be in a school at least once a month, yeah. Talking to young people,
Because as you were talking, I was thinking, you need to be on stage at schools talking to these boys.
Yeah.
You need to be working with them in groups. They need this kind of role model.
Yeah.
That there is a way through. What was your journey through from the gangs, the drugs, how did it shift and change?
Alcohol stopped working for me, is the truth.
Okay.
So I feel like I was drinking and still being miserable. And I started to realize that. And my mum had always said to me, you'll never control your drink. You'll never control it. She said, I watched your dad try and try and try. You will never control it. She said, if it ever becomes a problem, your only option will be to stop it entirely. That'd always been my mum's advice. So I kind of had that in the back of my head. And I feel like it's almost like I pushed the limit of what was okay with it until I eventually said, maybe I've got to stop here. There was a series of things that had happened, there was like a sort of pitiful suicide attempt when I was drinking, using drugs, and I'd been on a football thing up north and I broke my jaw really badly in 3 different places. It snapped. And I tried to end it there. And then so it was within about 6 months of that.
Okay.
There's another crazy bit of a story. I'd also trapped my foot in a machine at work and lost the end of my left foot.
Gosh.
So I was going to get a pet. I'm laughing because I still play football in that. Like it didn't really dramatically change my life. But I was in a lot of debt at that stage of my life. And I was going to get a big payout for my foot. And it was all like, you're going to clear your debt and everything's going to be all right. But I knew, it was actually my best mate said to me, when you get that money, you won't clear your debt.
Okay.
He said, you know that, don't you? And I knew he was right. And I think that became the catalyst of like thinking maybe I need to do this. And I was drinking, the last day I drank was the 13th of May, 2012. And the landlord of the pub that I used to drink in was a compulsive gambler at the time who was about 18 months free from gambling.
Okay.
And he took me to a 12-step meeting the next morning.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And where you are now, you're not in gangs, you're not fighting, you're not dealing drugs, you're not smoking, you're not drinking. You're now married with children.
Yeah. Loads of children.
Loads of children. Tell me.
I've got 6 kids.
Josh.
Yeah, I've got 6 kids, yeah. So I had my first daughter was born when I was 18. So when I was still drinking.
Okay.
So I had 4 children in my previous marriage when I was drinking. And that marriage ended maybe 6 months before I stopped drinking.
Right.
And we had 4 kids. And then I've remarried. I've got 2 children now. So
6 children.
So yeah, they're 18, 17, 13, 12, 8 and 6. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a rich, full life of
Yeah,
bringing
I mean,
a
it
new
comes
generation.
With it comes with this. It comes with
Well,
a
I've
lot.
got 3. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking 3 is a lot. So 6. Yeah, but I feel like they're an element to why you're on this journey of having what we in therapy term as breaking generational trauma and breaking generational cycles.
Yeah.
And what I think is really interesting with you is I'm interested to know how the self-awareness came about, because you're so honest in that when you were in it, that you were enjoying it. There wasn't a level of this is wrong or I need to get out of this. But so that journey of moving towards self-awareness and noticing, I wonder if that really came from the catalyst of so many children or...
Yeah, I think so. I think like when and I think I wrote about it in the book, but when my first daughter was born, I remember distinctly feeling like I won't be able to show up to this.
Okay.
And to be fair to me, I think if we're being, again, because I'm always all for gut level honesty, at 18 I wasn't.
You're very young.
Yeah, and I was, I was a reckless, I didn't have a job or anything when Gracie was born. So, So I couldn't show up to it. And look, I think the self-awareness, I was 9 months sober when I seriously planned to take my own life when I was 9 months sober. And this is relevant, I'll tell you why.
No, of course.
And I went to see my kids. It was over for me, right? I was at peace. This wasn't like a sort of some of the pitiful things that had happened in the past in my own experience. This was like, I was done. I'd tried everything. I'd stopped drinking. And I think this is really important. I thought when I stopped drinking, my problems would go away. And I'll take that a step further and say, when I was drinking, I blamed a lot of the ways that I was on drinking. And so when you stop drinking, and then first, all of the feelings that you run away from come flooding back. But then some of the resulting behaviors that you use to deal with your feelings, you're doing them now without alcohol. So then I'm like, well, I can't even blame it on drink. I've not even had alcohol when I'm, behaving in certain ways. So then I couldn't see a way out. And so I went to see my kids, and because I knew what was going to happen, what happened is the past became irrelevant, the future was non-existent, and I was present. I didn't know this at the time, but I was present with the kids in a way that I'd never experienced. And that's probably the first time ever in my life I experienced love and what that means. Because I've always known rationally, I think a lot of men experience this, I've always known rationally that I loved my kids. But I don't know if I'd ever felt it until that point. Because a lot of my life, I'd done what I think a lot of people do, by the way, which is see a situation, understand what experience I should be having in this situation, and then playing up to that.
Yeah.
So I would go, this is a happy moment. I know how I act when I act happy. This is how I act happy. So love was the same. I love my daughter. What does love mean? Well, that means I kiss her and I cuddle her and I tell her I love her. But feeling it,
actions,
you have to be connected to your body.
Of course.
So I think from that weekend, what happened is after that weekend, I became committed to truth. Because what I realized is that there's nothing wrong with me. Nobody ever zoomed out and looked at my experience and said, you've been acting pretty appropriately based on everything that's happened. Nobody ever said that to me. No. So when I saw that, I was like, if somebody had said this to me when I was a kid and helped me understand this, that's all I've ever wanted, is to understand why back then I hate myself so much.
I know.
And I was never given it.
I know,
So I became like maybe obsessed with truth.
Okay.
And so like, and I was still working in the factory at the time. And I used to do 12-hour days. And for them whole 12 hours sober, I would like listen to seminars and talks. And then I would read a book on my lunch break. And then I would be thinking, how does that relate to me? How do I find out about myself? And then I learned all about the parts of who I am and all the versions of myself. And I started to realize that, you know, I show up in different ways at different times, and each version of myself is doing its best.
Sounds like internal family system.
Yeah, I love internal family systems.
Oh, isn't it brilliant?
Yeah.
Josh, I have one final question. The one question I ask all my guests, which is, what does it mean to you to choose you?
I think to truly choose me is to allow the people that truly care about me to have me too. Because my life is about how I relate to myself, and ultimately, as a result of that, how I relate to other people. I did this thing, right, where I decided that I was introverted. And that's true. I do relate to being introverted in that I do a lot of resting and recharging on my own. But I also then used being introverted as a bit of a reason to withdraw from people, because my wounding only plays out in relation to other people. And so if I'm not careful, I find new ways to hide from everybody. I've done it over the last 12 years since I started this work 10 years ago with Nakoa and became a little bit of a leader. I hid as a leader. That was my new way to keep everybody at bay and to not, you know, so to truly be me is to be me in relationship with the people that I love and care about and that love and care about me.
I love that. I love that self-reflection, honesty as well there, really noticing. Josh, I've absolutely loved this conversation.
Yeah, me too. And it went really quickly. It went really quickly, didn't it?
It really did. I just felt like there was times I thought I could just sit and listen. I'm just going to listen. It was just wonderful, and I'm so looking forward to doing a part 2.
Yeah, same. Can't wait. Yeah.
Josh, thank you.
Thank you.